I'm Brandy, 32 years old, and right now I'm standing in my kitchen watching something on my phone that makes my blood boil. It's security footage of my parents and my brother Ryan using a key to enter my house. They're measuring rooms, discussing where his gaming setup will go, completely unaware that I'm not actually on a business trip to New York. I'm at a hotel 10 minutes away, watching their every move. They thought I was across the country. They had no idea I was watching everything. Before we dive into this wild story, I want to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's dealt with boundary-crossing family members too? Hit that like button if you believe in protecting what's yours, and don't forget to subscribe because this story is about to take some turns you won't see coming. Trust me, what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Let me back up and explain how I ended up spying on my own family from a hotel room. I've worked my tail off as a software engineer for the past decade, climbing the corporate ladder at one of Seattle's top tech companies. 2 years ago, I finally achieved my dream of buying my own house in the suburbs. It's nothing mansion-like, just a modest 4-bedroom, 3-bath home with a small yard, but it represents everything I've worked for since I was sleeping on a friend's couch during college. My younger brother Ryan, who's 29 now, has taken a different path. He's been unemployed for 3 years, bouncing between our parents' basement and various friends' couches. It's not that he can't work, he just won't. Every job is beneath him, every opportunity not quite right. He's had more failed business ventures than I can count, each one funded by our parents' dwindling retirement savings. There was the food truck that never got permits, the cryptocurrency consulting firm where he lost everyone's money, and most recently, a gaming tournament organization that turned out to be him just playing video games all day while spending investor money. Throughout our childhood, the favoritism was obvious, but I tried not to let it poison me. When I won the state science fair, my parents barely looked up from cheering at Ryan's Little League game where he struck out 3 times. When I got a full scholarship to university, the celebration dinner became about Ryan's acceptance to community college, which he dropped out of after 1 semester. When I graduated summa cum laude, they missed the ceremony because Ryan had gotten arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct the night before and needed bail money. But I pushed through it all, thinking that success would be the best revenge. I was wrong. Success just made me a bigger target. 3 weeks ago, we had our monthly family dinner at my parents' house. My mother, Susan, kept steering the conversation toward fresh starts and helping family in need. My father, Robert, mentioned how expensive rent was getting and how hard it was for young people to establish themselves. Ryan sat there playing on his phone, occasionally grunting in agreement. I should have seen it coming when Mom said, "You have all that space, Brandy. It must get lonely in that big house all by yourself." I deflected, mentioning that my boyfriend Jake stays over frequently and that I use the extra rooms for my home office and gym. Dad jumped in with, "But family should come first, shouldn't it? Ryan just needs some stability to get back on his feet." Ryan finally looked up from his phone to add, "Yeah, just for a few months while I get my new business sorted out." I changed the subject and left early, claiming I had work to finish. The next week, I flew to New York for a legitimate business conference. On my second day there, my neighbor Mrs. Chen sent me a text that made my heart drop. "Brandy, I thought you should know your parents are at your house. They've been here for about an hour. Is everything okay?" My hand shook as I opened my doorbell camera app. Sure enough, there they were, using a key to enter my home. I knew immediately which key because I'd hidden a spare under a fake rock in my garden for emergencies, and only told my parents about it in case something happened to me. The video quality was crystal clear as I watched them walk through my house like they owned it. The audio picked up my mother's voice. "She'll understand once it's done. You know how Brandy is, always overthinking everything. If we just present it as a fait accompli, she'll adapt. She always does." My father was in my home office, running his hands along my desk, saying, "This room would be perfect for Ryan's gaming setup. Look at all this wasted space she's using just for work." Ryan emerged from my master bedroom, actually laying on my bed, testing it out. This mattress is incredible. Way better than that old futon at Mom and Dad's. Maybe I should take the master and she can have one of the guest rooms. I mean, I'll be here more than her anyway with her always traveling for work. The rage that built inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't just about boundaries or respect anymore. This was about them literally trying to steal my home while I was away. But instead of calling them immediately, I made a different choice. I called my boss and explained I had a family emergency. He was understanding and told me to take whatever time I needed. Then I changed my flight to return to Seattle that evening but didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a hotel 15 minutes from my house and began planning. I spent that night watching the security footage, taking screenshots, and documenting everything. They spent 3 hours in my home, going through every room, every closet. My mother even went through my mail, commenting on my utility bills. Ryan had already picked out which bathroom would be his and was making plans to install a mini fridge in the bedroom. My father took measurements of the garage, discussing how they could fit Ryan's car alongside mine. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt more was their casual discussion of my life like I was just an obstacle to work around. My mother actually said, once Ryan's settled, it'll be harder for her to say no. Possession is 9/10 of the law, after all. They were planning to ambush me, to move him in while I was gone and dare me to throw out my own brother. But they didn't know their obedient, accommodating daughter had been keeping records of every slight, every boundary crossed, every dollar they'd guilt out of me over the years. They didn't know that I'd been seeing a therapist for 2 years to deal with the trauma of being the family scapegoat. Most importantly, they didn't know that I'd installed a comprehensive security system with audio recording capabilities in every room of my house just 6 months ago, after Ryan had borrowed some electronics during Thanksgiving that he later sold. As I sat in that hotel room, watching them plan their invasion of my life, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. If they wanted to play games with my home, my sanctuary, then I was going to play too. But unlike them, I was going to play to win. I opened my laptop and began crafting an email to my boss, extending my business trip for another week. Then I called Jake and told him everything. His response was immediate and supportive. Whatever you need, babe. They've pushed you around for too long. It's time to push back. Next, I texted Mrs. Chen, explaining the situation and asking her to keep an eye on things. Her response was equally supportive. I never liked how they treated you, dear. I'll watch everything and take notes. As I settled in for a long week of surveillance and planning, I thought about all the times I'd let things slide, all the instances where I'd chosen peace over justice. But they'd finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They were trying to steal my home, my safe space, the one thing I'd built entirely on my own without their help or interference. The trap was set the moment they used that key. They just didn't know it yet. To understand why I was willing to go to such lengths, you need to know the full history of what my family put me through. This wasn't just about a house, it was about a lifetime of being treated like my only value was what I could provide for Ryan. It started when we were kids. I was 7 and Ryan was 4 when the pattern first became clear. I'd saved my allowance for 6 months to buy a bike, doing extra chores and helping neighbors. The day before I planned to buy it, my pink and white dream bike with the basket and streamers, Ryan threw a tantrum in the store about wanting a motorized toy car. My parents took my savings envelope from my backpack and bought it for him, promising they'd pay me back. They never did. When I cried about it, my mother said, "He's younger than you, Brandy. You need to learn to share." By the time I was in high school, the pattern was firmly established. Every achievement of mine was overshadowed by Ryan's mediocrity being celebrated like excellence. I made honor roll every semester. Ryan got taken out for ice cream for getting a C in math. I worked part-time at the library while maintaining straight A's. Ryan got a car for his 16th birthday after failing his driving test twice. When I questioned the unfairness, my father would say, "You're naturally smart, Brandy. Ryan needs more support." The real theft began when I started college. I'd earned a full academic scholarship, but I still needed money for books, supplies, and living expenses. I'd saved $3,000 from working summers and weekends throughout high school. 2 weeks before I left for college, that money disappeared from my bank account. It turned out my mother, who was listed on the account from when I was a minor, had withdrawn it to pay for Ryan's motorcycle. He was 15 and couldn't even legally ride it on the street. When I confronted them, my parents acted like I was being selfish. "We'll help you with college expenses," they promised. That help never materialized. Instead, I worked 3 jobs during college, lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, and still graduated with honors. Meanwhile, Ryan crashed the motorcycle within 6 months, and they bought him a car. During my senior year, things reached a new low. My grandmother, my father's mother, passed away. She'd always seen through the favoritism and tried to protect me. In her will, she left me her vintage jewelry collection and $5,000 specifically for Brandy's future, which she will build through her own hard work and determination. The jewelry included pieces that had been in our family for generations, particularly a sapphire ring that she'd worn every day. The money went directly into an account only I could access, thanks to my grandmother's foresight. But the jewelry was given to my parents to pass on to me. It never made it. On Christmas morning, I opened the box that supposedly contained my inheritance to find it empty except for a note in my mother's handwriting. "Ryan needed help with some debts. You understand. Love, Mom." I later learned from Ryan's ex-girlfriend Diana that he'd sold every piece to cover gambling debts. The sapphire ring my grandmother wore every day of my life went to a pawn shop for a fraction of its worth. When I confronted my parents, they gaslit me, claiming Grandma must have been confused and never meant for me to have all that expensive jewelry. My father actually said, "She probably just told you that to make you feel special." You know how old people get confused. After college, I thought distance would help. I moved across the city, threw myself into my career, and limited contact to monthly dinners and holidays. But the requests for money started almost immediately. Ryan needed a loan for a business idea. Ryan's car broke down. Ryan had an opportunity that required investment. Each time, my parents would call, guilt-trip me about family helping family, and remind me of all they'd done for me growing up. The sick thing was, I usually gave in. Not because I believed their guilt trips, but because saying no meant weeks of harassment. They'd show up at my work, call my boss pretending there were family emergencies, and even contact my friends on social media to say they were worried about me because I was acting strange by not helping my brother. It was easier to write the check than deal with the campaign of terror. Jake came into my life 3 years ago, and he was the first person to really see what was happening. After witnessing one family dinner where my promotion to senior engineer was completely ignored in favor of celebrating Ryan's new plan to become a YouTube streamer, Jake sat me down for a serious talk. "Brandy, this isn't normal," he said gently. "The way they treat you, it's abusive. You know that, right?" That conversation led to me finding a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Through therapy, I began to understand that I wasn't crazy or selfish. I was being systematically exploited by my own family. Last Christmas was when things escalated to criminal behavior. I'd been dating Jake for over 2 years at that point, and he'd given me a beautiful pair of diamond earrings. I wore them to Christmas dinner at my parents' house. By the end of the evening, they were gone. I searched everywhere, thinking I'd misplaced them. Then Diana, who was still dating Ryan at the time despite his many red flags, pulled me aside a week later. "I think you should know," she said nervously, "Ryan took your earrings. I saw them in his jacket pocket that night, and he sold them the next day. He bragged about it, said you had so much nice stuff you wouldn't even notice." When I confronted Ryan, he laughed in my face. "Prove it," he said. "Besides, Jake can just buy you new ones. He's loaded, right?" That's when I installed the security system in my house. I told my family it was because of break-ins in the neighborhood, but really, it was because I no longer trusted them. I changed my locks too, but foolishly still told them about the emergency key. Old habits of trying to maintain some semblance of family connection, I suppose. The financial exploitation continued into this year. In January, my mother called crying, saying they were behind on their mortgage and might lose the house. I later found out they'd taken out a second mortgage to fund Ryan's cryptocurrency consulting firm, where he managed to lose not only their money but also $50,000 from other investors. Some of those investors were threatening legal action, and my parents were scrambling to pay them back to keep Ryan out of jail. Against Jake's advice and my therapist's warnings, I paid 3 months of their mortgage to keep them afloat. My thanks? Ryan posted on Instagram from Las Vegas 2 weeks later, gambling and partying with friends. When I confronted my parents about enabling him, my mother actually said, "He's networking for his business. You wouldn't understand, you just work for someone else." The pattern was always the same. They'd create a crisis, usually caused by Ryan's failures or schemes. They'd guilt me into helping, using every manipulation tactic in the book. They'd promise this was the last time, that Ryan was turning his life around. Then within weeks or months, Ryan would do something else destructive, and the cycle would begin again. But taking my house? That was a new level of entitlement even for them. As I sat in that hotel room, reviewing years of bank statements showing all the money I'd given them, all the loans never repaid, all the theft disguised as family obligation, I realized this was my line in the sand. My therapist had been preparing me for this moment for 2 years. There will come a time, she'd said, when they'll ask for something so outrageous that even your conditioned response to comply will fail. When that moment comes, you'll know it's time to break free. She was right. This was that moment. I pulled up my laptop and began documenting everything. Every payment I'd made, every item stolen, every promise broken. I had screenshots of Ryan's social media showing him living it up while I paid his debts. I had text messages from my parents guilt-tripping me. I had bank statements, emails, and now video evidence of them literally planning to steal my home. The trap wasn't just about catching them in the act. It was about finally having enough evidence to show the world what they really were. For too long, they'd hidden behind the facade of loving parents just trying to help their struggling son. Our extended family, their church community, their friends, all believed I was the selfish daughter who wouldn't help her family despite my success. But now I had proof. Undeniable, recorded, time-stamped proof of who they really were. And I was going to use it. The deeper I dug into their plan, the more horrified I became. This wasn't just a spontaneous idea, they'd been orchestrating this for months. My discovery started with something simple. My mother had been terrible with technology, so I'd set up her email account years ago and still remembered the password. I know it was wrong to access it, but desperate times called for desperate measures. What I found in her inbox made my blood run cold. There were dozens of emails between her and Ryan dating back 3 months, discussing Operation Fresh Start. They'd literally codenamed their plan to steal my house. The emails revealed everything. Ryan had been researching tenant rights in Washington state, discovering that if he established residency, it would be nearly impossible for me to remove him quickly. My mother had been noting my travel schedule, keeping track of when I'd be gone for extended periods. One email from Ryan made me particularly sick. "Mom, I found out that if I get mail delivered there and stay for 30 days, she'd have to legally evict me. That could take months. By then, I'll have my business up and running, and maybe she'll just accept it. Plus, if I'm already there, I can start using her address for my new credit cards. Her credit is perfect, it'll help my applications." My mother's response was equally disturbing. "Just be careful not to damage anything at first. We need her to think it's temporary. Once you're established, we can work on making it permanent. Your father thinks if we present it right, she might even add you to the deed eventually. After all, family shares everything." I had to take a break from reading to throw up. They weren't just planning to move him in, they were planning to steal my identity, my credit, and potentially my entire property. The entitlement was staggering. but what hurt more was the calculated nature of it all. This wasn't a desperate move by loving parents, this was a con job, and I was the mark. Digging deeper, I found correspondence with Ryan's friend Craig, who apparently was in on the plan. Craig ran an unlicensed car repair business and had been evicted from his last 3 workshops. The plan was for him to use my garage as his new base of operations. Ryan had promised him he could work there rent-free in exchange for keeping an eye on things when Ryan traveled for his business ventures. There were also emails to someone named Marcus, another of Ryan's gambling buddies, discussing how the house had plenty of room for poker nights and how I was never home anyway. They'd already planned to turn my finished basement into their private casino. Ryan had even researched how to soundproof it so I wouldn't hear them if I happened to come home during one of their games. The financial rabbit hole went even deeper. In my mother's sent folder, I found emails to various utility companies. She hadn't just been planning to add Ryan's name, she'd been gathering information to potentially transfer services entirely. There were inquiries about changing account holders, questions about what documentation would be needed, and even a draft letter claiming to be me authorizing the changes. I realized they'd been intercepting my mail during their visits. Several of my statements had gone missing recently, and I'd assumed it was postal service errors. Now I knew better. They'd been studying my finances, learning my account numbers, preparing for a complete takeover. Then I found the smoking gun, an email thread with a locksmith. They'd gotten quotes for changing all the locks in my house, planning to do it while I was on an extended business trip next month. The locksmith had even provided advice on changing smart locks, though they'd ultimately decided against it because they couldn't figure out how to block my remote access without alerting me. My father's involvement became clear through forwarded emails. While he played the role of reluctant participant when talking to me, behind the scenes he was fully on board. He'd researched squatters' rights, tenant law, and even consulted with a friend who was a paralegal about how to establish Ryan's residency quickly. His research showed that if Ryan could prove he'd been living there with my permission, even verbally, it would complicate any legal action I might take. But they'd made one crucial mistake, they'd underestimated me. They still saw me as the compliant daughter who would eventually cave to family pressure. They didn't realize I'd been documenting everything for years, that I had my own legal resources, and that I was no longer the scared little girl who just wanted her parents' approval. I called my cousin Melissa, who'd always been the black sheep on my mother's side for calling out family dysfunction. "I'm not surprised," she said when I told her what I'd discovered. "Aunt Susan's been bragging at family gatherings about how Ryan's finally getting his life together, how he's moving into a beautiful house. I thought he'd somehow bought one, but now it makes sense. She's been telling everyone you offered to let him stay with you." This was news to me and added another layer to their plan. They were creating a public narrative that would make me look like the bad guy if I refused to let Ryan stay. By telling extended family I'd already agreed, they were setting up social pressure that would make it harder for me to say no. Melissa also revealed something disturbing: "Your mom's been asking everyone about their experiences with restraining orders." She played it off as research for a friend, but she specifically wanted to know how to fight one if someone tried to get one against a family member. My Aunt Catherine, my mother's older sister who'd always disapproved of how they treated me, confirmed Melissa's information when I called her. "I've been worried about you, honey," she said. "Your mother's been acting strange, asking legal questions, talking about how family property should be shared." I told her she was out of line, but she said I didn't understand because I never had a son who needed help. The sexism in that statement wasn't lost on me. In their minds, Ryan deserved everything simply by virtue of being the son, while I was just the daughter whose success was meant to be harvested for his benefit. Jake's friend, an attorney named Sarah Mackenzie who specialized in property law, agreed to meet with me off the books. When I showed her what I'd found, her expression went from skeptical to horrified. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud," she said. "They're not just planning to move him in. They're planning to steal your identity and property. You need to act fast." I spent the next 2 days working with Sarah to understand my options. We filed paperwork to put additional protections on my property deed, froze my credit, and added fraud alerts to all my accounts. She helped me understand the eviction process and what evidence I'd need if it came to that. But I didn't want it to come to that. I wanted to stop them before they could execute their plan. That meant gathering more evidence and setting up safeguards they couldn't anticipate. I had Mrs. Chen start documenting every visit with photos and timestamps. I gave her a notebook specifically for this purpose, and she took to it with enthusiasm. I always thought something was off about them, she said. The way they'd look around the neighborhood like they were casing it. Now I know why. I also reached out to Tom, the owner of the security company who'd installed my system. He was a former police officer who'd started his own business, and when I explained the situation, he was more than happy to help. Family theft is more common than people think, he said. Let me upgrade your system with some features that'll help you document everything. He added motion-activated cameras to every entrance, upgraded the audio quality on interior cameras, and installed a system that would automatically back up all footage to a cloud server they couldn't access even if they somehow disabled the physical system. He also added a feature that would alert me the moment anyone entered the property, with real-time streaming to my phone. The trap was no longer just about catching them in the act. It was about building an airtight case that would protect me legally and expose them publicly. Every email I found, every conversation I recorded, every document I uncovered added another bar to the cage I was building around their scheme. As I sat in my hotel room on the fourth night, surrounded by printed emails, legal documents, and notebooks full of evidence, I realized I'd uncovered something bigger than just a plan to move Ryan in. This was a systematic attempt to transfer my wealth, property, and future to my brother, orchestrated by my parents with the cold calculation of professional criminals. But they'd forgotten one crucial thing: I hadn't gotten where I was by being weak or stupid. Every obstacle they'd put in my path had only made me stronger and more resourceful. Now it was time to use everything I'd learned to protect what was mine. With all the evidence I'd gathered, it was time to set my trap. Working with Sarah Mackenzie, I developed a multi-layered plan that would not only protect my property but also expose their scheme in a way they couldn't deny or manipulate. The first step was legal preparation. Sarah helped me file a formal trespass warning with the local police department, specifically naming my parents and Ryan. This created an official record that they were not authorized to be on my property without my explicit permission. We also filed paperwork with the county recorder's office to flag any attempts to change the deed or add names to my property title. We're creating a paper trail, Sarah explained. If they try to claim you gave them permission or that there was some verbal agreement, we'll have documented evidence to the contrary. We sent certified letters to their home addresses, clearly stating that they were not authorized to enter my property, make any changes to utilities or services in my name, or represent themselves as having any ownership interest in my home. Next came the technological preparations. Beyond the security upgrades Tom had installed, I set up a comprehensive digital trap. I created fake financial documents showing that I was in serious financial trouble. Bank statements showing massive debt, overdue notices from credit card companies, even a fabricated foreclosure warning. I printed these out and left them strategically placed in my home office where I knew they'd snoop. The goal was simple: if they thought I was about to lose the house anyway, they might accelerate their plans and become sloppier in their execution. Desperate people make mistakes, and I wanted them desperate. I also created a false email trail on a laptop I left prominently on my desk. The emails discussed my impending job loss, a fictional lawsuit from a former client, and my consideration of filing for bankruptcy. I even drafted an email to a fake bankruptcy attorney asking about the implications for my house. If my mother was still monitoring my digital life, she'd think she hit the jackpot. Working with Tom, we installed hidden cameras in addition to the visible ones. If they tried to disable the obvious security system, they wouldn't know about the backup cameras recording everything. We also placed high-quality audio recorders in strategic locations, inside desk drawers they'd likely open, behind picture frames, even inside the fake rock where the spare key had been. Jake played a crucial role in the plan. He started posting on social media about our extended vacation to Europe, complete with photos from previous trips to make it seem current. The posts were public, ensuring Ryan and my parents would see them and believe they had even more time to execute their plan. Mrs. Chen became my eyes on the ground. I gave her a schedule of when to be visible in her yard, when to walk her dog past my house, and what to document. She took to her role with enthusiasm, even recruiting her husband to help. "It's like being in a spy movie," she said with glee. But for a good cause. The honeypot was set. I made sure to leave enough breadcrumbs to make them think I was vulnerable while documenting their every move. The fake financial documents were just the beginning. I also left a draft resignation letter on my computer screen, visible to anyone who walked by. A printed email from a fictional divorce attorney was tucked into a kitchen drawer, suggesting Jake and I were having problems. Everything pointed to a life falling apart, a person too distracted by personal crises to notice what was happening to her home. Days passed as I watched from my hotel room. They came by twice more, each time staying longer. On the second visit, Ryan brought boxes. Not many, just a few test boxes to see if anyone would notice. He put them in the guest room closet, hidden behind existing items. My mother went through my office thoroughly, and I watched her face light up as she found the fake financial documents. The audio was clear as she called my father over. "Robert, look at this. She's in serious trouble. We might need to move faster than we thought. If she loses this house to the bank, Ryan loses his chance at a fresh start." My father studied the documents, and I could see him calculating. "Maybe we should talk to that lawyer friend of yours about power of attorney," he said. "If she's having a breakdown, someone needs to protect her assets." The audacity of it made me sick, but it also thrilled me. They were taking the bait perfectly. Every crime they planned was being recorded in high definition with crystal clear audio. Ryan's behavior was particularly telling. He walked around my house like he already owned it, planning out loud where his things would go. "I'm gonna put my streaming setup right here," he said in my office. "This lighting is perfect. And the basement, man, Craig's gonna love working in that garage. We can run the business right from here." Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. They brought in the locksmith for a consultation. The man was clearly uncomfortable, repeatedly asking about my authorization. My mother smooth-talked him, claiming I was her daughter and had asked her to handle this while I was traveling. "She's so busy with work," she said. "Always forgetting things. That's why she gave us power of attorney." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily it was chilling. They hadn't even attempted to get power of attorney, but she was already using it as justification for crimes. The locksmith left without doing any work, clearly suspicious, but the intent was captured on camera. Craig showed up on day 5 of my surveillance. He drove his van into my garage and unloaded some tools, testing the space for his illegal repair shop. The cameras caught him telling Ryan, "This is perfect, man. Way better than that warehouse I was in. And if your sister gives us any trouble, well, possession is 9/10 of the law, right?" Ryan laughed and agreed. "By the time she figures out what's happening, it'll be too late. We'll be established residents. She can't just throw us out. I've done my research." What they didn't know was that their research was about to meet reality. Washington state law doesn't smile upon squatters the way they thought it did, especially when there's documented evidence of breaking and entering, fraud, and conspiracy. I'd given them a week to fully incriminate themselves, and they'd exceeded my expectations. They'd brought in more boxes, Craig had set up a portion of his workshop, and they'd even started receiving mail at my address. Ryan had several packages delivered, and I watched my mother forge my signature for them. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos of them discussing their crimes, audio of them planning identity theft, documentation of trespassing, forgery, and fraud. They'd even been foolish enough to text about it, with Ryan sending messages to friends bragging about his new house and how his stupid sister had no idea what was happening. Sarah reviewed everything and was impressed. "This is beyond what we need for a restraining order," she said. "This is criminal prosecution territory." "Are you prepared for that possibility?" I thought about all the years of theft, manipulation, and abuse. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm prepared for whatever it takes to protect myself." The final phase of the trap was the confrontation. I planned it carefully, coordinating with Sarah, the police, and even a private security firm Jake insisted on hiring. We wouldn't give them any opportunity to claim I'd threatened them or acted inappropriately. Everything would be by the book, legal, and documented. I scheduled my return for Sunday afternoon, knowing they planned to be at my house. Ryan had posted on social media about a housewarming party he was planning for the following weekend at his new place. The arrogance of it was astounding, but it gave me the perfect timeline. As I prepared to spring the trap, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for the family I'd never really had, anger at their betrayal, but mostly relief. This would finally end the cycle of abuse. No more guilt trips, no more theft, no more treating me like an ATM with unlimited funds. I sent a final email to my extended family, including Melissa and Aunt Catherine, letting them know what was about to happen. I didn't want them blindsided when my parents inevitably tried to spin the narrative. Melissa's response was immediate: "It's about time. We've got your back." The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. Sunday arrived with the kind of clarity that felt like poetic justice. The Seattle morning was crisp and bright as I prepared for what would either be the end of my family relationships or the beginning of my freedom. Perhaps both. Jake insisted on coming with me, along with the private security officer he'd hired, a former Marine named David who specialized in domestic situations. Sarah Mackenzie met us at a coffee shop near my house to review the plan one final time. We had police officers on standby, ready to respond if needed. Every detail had been meticulously planned. At exactly 2 p.m, we pulled up to my house. Multiple cars were in the driveway, including Ryan's beat-up Honda, Craig's work van, and my parents' SUV. Through the windows, I could see movement inside. They were making themselves at home in my space, probably congratulating themselves on their clever scheme. I took a deep breath, activated the recording app on my phone as a backup to the house's security system, and walked to my front door. Using my key, I entered my own home like I was walking onto a battlefield. The scene that greeted me was worse than I'd imagined. My living room had been rearranged. Ryan's gaming setup dominated one corner, his massive TV mounted on my wall without permission. Empty beer bottles littered my coffee table. Craig's muddy work boots had tracked dirt across my hardwood floors. The smell of cigarette smoke violated my strict no-smoking rule. My mother emerged from the kitchen, her face cycling through emotions, surprise, fear, then quickly manufactured delight. "Brandy! You're home early." "We were just." She trailed off, unable to find a suitable lie fast enough. "Just what, Mom?" I asked calmly. "Just moving Ryan into my house without my permission? Just rearranging my furniture? Just letting strangers smoke in my living room?" Ryan appeared from the hallway, wearing only boxers and an undershirt, looking like he'd just woken up. In my bed, no doubt. "Hey, sis," he said with fake casualness. "Didn't expect you back so soon. How was the trip?" "I think the better question is, what are you doing in my house?" My father came down the stairs, and the guilt on his face was almost satisfying. "Now, Brandy, let's not overreact. We can explain everything. This is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the security footage. "Like when you said, and I quote, 'She'll understand once it's done?' Or when Ryan here was planning to use my address for credit card applications? That kind of misunderstanding?" The color drained from their faces as they realized I'd been watching everything. Ryan's bravado crumbled first. "You've been spying on us?" "No, Ryan. I've been monitoring my own property, which you've been illegally entering and occupying." "Big difference." I turned to see Craig emerging from my garage, wiping his hands on a rag. And you must be the one planning to run an illegal business out of my garage. Craig looked between Ryan and my parents, clearly calculating his exit strategy. I don't know what you're talking about. Ryan said this was his place now. Did he? I smiled coldly. Did he also mention that he has no legal right to this property? That you're all trespassing? That I have video evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud? My mother switched to manipulation mode, tears appearing on cue. Brandy, sweetie, we're family. We were just trying to help Ryan get on his feet. You have all this space. Space that I pay for. In the house that I bought. With the money that I earned. None of which gives you the right to move someone in without my permission. But he's your brother, she wailed. How can you be so heartless? The same brother who stole my college savings? Who sold grandma's jewelry? Who took my earrings last Christmas? That brother? Ryan stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate me. Jake and David moved closer, making their presence known. Ryan stopped, but his face was ugly with rage. You owe me, he spat. You got everything handed to you while I struggled. Handed to me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I worked 3 jobs in college while you were crashing motorcycles. I studied while you partied. I built a career while you conned people out of money. The only thing handed to anyone here was every opportunity you squandered. My father tried the authoritative approach. Young lady, you're being disrespectful. We're your parents. We have rights. No, I interrupted. You have no rights here. This is my property, and you're trespassing. I pulled out the formal documents Sarah had prepared. These are cease and desist orders for all 3 of you. You're officially banned from this property. There's also a police report filed for breaking and entering, and potential charges for fraud pending investigation. The room exploded. Ryan shouted obscenities, my mother sobbed dramatically, and my father threatened to disown me. Craig tried to slip out quietly but found David blocking the door. Nobody leaves until the police arrive, I announced. They're already on their way. You called the cops on your own family? Ryan's voice was incredulous. No, I called the cops on criminals who happened to share my DNA. My mother's tears dried up instantly, replaced by venom. You always were an ungrateful bitch. Everything we did for you, and this is how you repay us? Everything you did? Like stealing my money? Gaslighting me? Trying to destroy my credit? Please, elaborate on all you've done for me. She had no answer, just more rage. The mask had finally slipped completely. These weren't loving parents who'd made mistakes, these were people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. The police arrived within 10 minutes. I presented them with the documentation, the videos, and the evidence of their crimes. The officers were professional and thorough, taking statements from everyone present. Craig was cited for operating without a business license and given a warning about trespassing. My parents and Ryan were formally served with trespass notices. Ryan made one last attempt at manipulation. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have anywhere to live. That's not my problem, I replied. Maybe if you'd spent less time planning to steal my house and more time getting your life together, you'd have options. As the police escorted them out, my father turned back one last time. You're going to regret this. No one will side with you over your own family. We'll see about that, I said quietly. The house emptied out, leaving me standing in my violated space with Jake, David, and Sarah. The silence was deafening after all the shouting. I looked around at the damage, the unauthorized holes in my walls from Ryan's TV mount, the cigarette burns on my coffee table, the mud ground into my floors. But I was free. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. It's hard now, but it was necessary. Jake wrapped me in a hug. I'm proud of you. That took incredible courage. As we began documenting the damage for insurance and legal purposes, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to them completely. No compromise, no negotiation, no giving in to keep the peace. The war wasn't over, I knew. They would retaliate, spread lies, try to destroy my reputation. But I had truth on my side, evidence to back it up, and the support of people who actually cared about me. As the sun set on that Sunday afternoon, I stood in my kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. My house was mine again. My life was mine again. The trap had worked perfectly, catching not just criminals but freeing me from a lifetime of abuse. The real work of healing could finally begin. I should have known they wouldn't go quietly. Within 24 hours of the confrontation, my phone began buzzing with calls and texts from extended family members. My parents had launched a full-scale campaign to destroy my reputation. The first call came from my Uncle Dennis, my father's brother. "Brandy, what's this I hear about you calling the police on your parents? Your mother is devastated. She says you've lost your mind." I calmly explained the situation, even offering to send him the security footage. His tone changed immediately. "They did what? They were moving Ryan in without telling you? That's not right." But not everyone was willing to listen to facts. My mother's cousin Carol, who'd always been jealous of my success, was all too happy to believe their version. She left me a voicemail calling me heartless and probably on drugs because no normal person treats family this way. The real escalation came at 3 in the morning on Tuesday. My security system alerted me to motion at my front door. I checked the cameras to see Ryan trying to jimmy the lock with what looked like a credit card. His movements were unsteady, suggesting he was drunk or high. I called 911 immediately. By the time the police arrived, Ryan had given up on the front door and was trying windows. They caught him red-handed attempting to break into my basement window. This time, there was no talking his way out. He was arrested for attempted breaking and entering and violation of a restraining order. My mother called me from the police station at 5 in the morning, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "How dare you have my baby arrested? He just wanted to get his things." "He has no things here," I replied calmly. "And even if he did, breaking in at 3 in the morning isn't how you retrieve property. He can coordinate with the police if he has belongings here, which he doesn't." "You're going to pay for this," she hissed. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." She made good on that threat. By noon, my social media was flooded with messages. My parents had posted a carefully crafted sob story on Facebook, claiming I'd thrown my disabled veteran brother out on the street. Ryan had never served in the military and his only disability was an allergy to honest work, but those details didn't matter to the angry mob they'd mobilized. The post went semi-viral in our community. They'd shared it to every local group, every family page, every connection they had. The comments were brutal. People who didn't know me were calling me heartless, selfish, and worse. Some even made threats. Jake helped me document everything for potential harassment charges while Sarah advised me to lock down my social media and not engage. But the damage to my reputation was spreading. Someone found my LinkedIn and started contacting my employer, claiming I was mentally unstable and shouldn't be trusted with important projects. My boss, thankfully, was understanding. "I know you, Brandy. This is clearly harassment. We'll handle it through proper channels." The company's legal department got involved, sending cease and desist letters to the most egregious offenders. But Ryan wasn't done. Out on bail, he started showing up at places he knew I frequented. The grocery store, my gym, the coffee shop near my office. He never approached me directly, knowing that would violate the restraining order, but he made sure I saw him. It was intimidation, pure and simple. Then came the financial attacks. I started getting alerts about credit applications in my name. Ryan had enough of my personal information to attempt identity theft on a massive scale. Despite the fraud alerts I'd placed, some applications were getting through. I spent hours on the phone with credit agencies and banks, shutting down fraudulent accounts. The stress was taking its toll. I wasn't sleeping well, jumping at every notification from my security system. Jake stayed with me most nights, but I could see the strain on him too. This wasn't what he'd signed up for when we started dating. The smear campaign reached new lows when my mother started contacting my clients. As a software engineer, I occasionally did freelance work on the side. She found my professional website and emailed every testimonial, warning them that I was unstable and dangerous. I lost 2 clients before I could do damage control. Craig, apparently deciding he had nothing to lose, started leaving threatening voicemails. "You cost me a good setup," one message said. "Ryan's family was going to take care of me. You better watch your back." I forwarded everything to the police and Sarah. Criminal harassment charges were added to the growing list of legal issues facing my family. The extended family was splitting into camps. Aunt Catherine publicly defended me, sharing her own stories of my parents' favoritism and manipulation. She revealed things even I didn't know, like how they'd tried to get her to co-sign loans for Ryan, using emotional manipulation when she refused. Cousin Melissa created a counter-narrative on social media, posting the security footage I'd shared with her. "This is what really happened," she wrote. "Brandy's not the villain here. She's the victim who finally fought back." The video of my parents planning the theft went viral in a different way. People who'd attacked me started apologizing, realizing they'd been manipulated. The tide of public opinion began to turn. But my parents doubled down. They gave an interview to a local blog that specialized in family drama, painting themselves as loving parents just trying to help their struggling son. They claimed the videos were taken out of context and that I'd always been jealous of Ryan. The harassment escalated to my workplace. Someone called in a bomb threat using my name. The building was evacuated, and I was questioned by federal agents. Fortunately, the call was traced to a burner phone purchased with a credit card in Ryan's name. He claimed it was stolen, but the security footage from the store showed him making the purchase. This finally pushed things over the edge. Ryan was arrested again, this time on federal charges. The FBI doesn't take bomb threats lightly, even fake ones. He was looking at serious prison time. My mother's campaign shifted to legal threats. She found a sketchy lawyer willing to sue me for elder abuse and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit was baseless, but I still had to hire Sarah officially to defend against it. The financial cost was mounting. Legal fees, security upgrades, lost clients, time off work to deal with the chaos. My parents might not have gotten my house, but they were succeeding in making my life hell. Jake and I had a serious conversation one evening. "I'm not going anywhere," he assured me. "But maybe we should consider moving. Starting fresh somewhere they can't find you." The idea had merit. My company had offices in other cities, and my boss had already offered to facilitate a transfer if I needed it. The thought of running felt like letting them win, but I was exhausted. Things came to a head when I discovered my parents had hired a private investigator to follow me. I noticed the same car everywhere I went and finally confronted the driver. He admitted he'd been hired to document my daily activities, looking for anything that could be used against me in court. That night, I made a decision. Running wasn't letting them win, it was choosing my peace over their drama. I started the transfer process at work, began looking for homes in a city across the country, and quietly planned my exit. But I wasn't going without ensuring they faced consequences. I worked with Sarah to file criminal charges for harassment, stalking, and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. The bomb threat had elevated everything to a federal level, meaning they couldn't just walk away. As I packed up my life, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was leaving the city I'd called home for over a decade, but I was also leaving behind decades of abuse and manipulation. The investigation into the bomb threat revealed more than anyone expected. Ryan's computer, seized by the FBI, contained evidence of multiple fraud schemes, identity theft operations, and connections to some genuinely dangerous people. His gambling debts had led him into criminal enterprises I hadn't even imagined. My parents, faced with the reality that their golden child was looking at significant federal charges, finally began to crack. The unified front they'd presented started showing fissures. My father contacted me through his lawyer, offering to drop the lawsuit if I would speak to the prosecutor on Ryan's behalf. No, was my simple answer. They'd made their choices. Now they had to live with the consequences. As moving day approached, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. The trap I'd set had worked better than I'd imagined. Not only had I protected my home, but I'd exposed the truth about my family in a way that no one could deny. The escalation had been brutal, but it had also been clarifying. These weren't people who loved me. They were parasites who saw me as a host to be drained. And finally, I was free of them. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Austin, Texas, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The city sprawled before me, full of possibility and free from the shadows of my past. The journey to this moment of peace had been harder than I ever imagined, but I had survived. The legal consequences for my family had been severe but justified. Ryan was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for the bomb threat, with additional time for identity theft and fraud. The investigation had uncovered a web of criminal activities that shocked even the prosecutors. He'd been running credit card scams, filing false insurance claims, and had even been involved in a cryptocurrency theft ring. The golden child my parents had protected and enabled all these years was revealed to be a career criminal. My parents faced their own legal troubles. The harassment charges stuck, resulting in hefty fines and probation. The civil lawsuit they'd filed against me was dismissed with prejudice, and they were ordered to pay my legal fees. The financial strain, combined with the loans they'd taken out for Ryan's various schemes, forced them to sell their house. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd tried to steal my home and ended up losing their own. My father had attempted to reach out once more before I left Seattle. He sent a letter through his attorney, not apologizing but lamenting how everything had gone wrong. He blamed Ryan, society, the economy, everyone but himself and my mother for creating the monster their son had become. I read it once and threw it away. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. My mother's dissent was harder to witness from afar. Aunt Catherine kept me informed, despite my requests not to hear about them. She told me my mother had aged years and months, that the loss of control had broken something in her. She'd alienated most of the family with her lies and manipulation, and now faced the consequences of a lifetime of enabling abuse. She asks about you, Catherine told me during one call. Not to reconcile, but to blame you. In her mind, you're still the villain who destroyed her family. She destroyed her own family, I replied. I just refused to be destroyed along with it. The move to Austin had been exactly what I needed. My company's office here was smaller but more innovative, and I thrived in the new environment. My colleagues knew nothing about my past drama, seeing me only as a talented engineer with fresh ideas. I was promoted within 3 months, leading a team developing cutting-edge security software. The irony of specializing in security after what I'd been through wasn't lost on me. Jake had moved with me, our relationship stronger for having weathered the storm together. He proposed on a hiking trail outside the city, in a quiet moment free from drama or fear. The ring was simple and perfect, nothing like the flashy jewelry that had been stolen from me over the years. It represented a future built on trust and mutual respect, not obligation and manipulation. We married in a small ceremony with only our chosen family present. Melissa flew in from Seattle, along with Aunt Catherine and a handful of true friends who'd stood by me. Mrs. Chen sent a beautiful card and a photo of my old house, now occupied by a lovely young family who appreciated what they had. It was closure I hadn't known I needed. The healing process was ongoing. Therapy had become a regular part of my life, not a sign of weakness but a tool for strength. My therapist helped me work through decades of programming that told me I was only valuable for what I could provide to others. I learned to set boundaries without guilt, to recognize manipulation tactics, and most importantly, to trust my own judgment. You were trained from birth to be a resource for your brother, she explained during one session. Every natural instinct to protect yourself was systematically beaten down. The fact that you finally stood up to them isn't just impressive, it's miraculous. I started a blog about family financial abuse, sharing my story anonymously to help others in similar situations. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out with their own stories of siblings who stole, parents who enabled, and families who saw success as something to be harvested rather than celebrated. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. The blog evolved into a support group, then a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of family financial abuse. We provided resources for legal help, emotional support, and practical advice for protecting assets from predatory relatives. It gave meaning to my pain, transforming it into something that could help others. Ryan tried to contact me once from prison. The letter was full of blame and demands for money, proving he'd learned nothing. I didn't respond, but I did share it with my support group as an example of how abusers never really change without genuine accountability and desire for transformation. He had 3 more years to think about his choices. I doubted he'd use the time wisely. The extended family had largely rallied to my side once the truth came out. Several cousins shared their own stories of my parents trying to guilt them into helping Ryan over the years. The pattern of exploitation had been wider than just me. I was simply the most successful and therefore the biggest target. The family reunions I'd always dreaded were now Ryan and parents-free zones, actually enjoyable for the first time in my life. My success in Austin continued to grow. The security software my team developed won industry awards, and I was invited to speak at conferences about innovation in cybersecurity. I never mentioned that my expertise came from having to protect myself from my own family, but the personal experience gave me insights that pure technical knowledge couldn't provide. Jake and I bought a house in Austin, smaller than my Seattle home but perfect for us. We installed a state-of-the-art security system, not out of fear but out of wisdom. We hosted dinner parties for our new friends, created a home filled with chosen family who respected boundaries and celebrated each other's successes. On the anniversary of the confrontation, I received an unexpected call. Diana, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, had tracked down my new number. She was calling to thank me. "Seeing you stand up to them gave me the courage to get out," she said. "I'm in therapy now, dealing with what that relationship did to me." You saved more than just yourself when you exposed them. It was a reminder that our actions ripple outward in ways we don't always see. By refusing to be a victim anymore, I'd shown others that it was possible to break free. The financial recovery took time but was ultimately complete. The money I'd spent on legal fees was earned back through my promotion and speaking engagements. The clients I'd lost were replaced by better ones who valued my expertise. The credit damage from Ryan's identity theft attempts was repaired. I was whole again, financially and emotionally. As I stood on that balcony in Austin, watching the city wake up, I reflected on the journey. The trap I'd set for my family had been about more than catching them in the act. It had been about breaking a cycle of abuse that might have continued for the rest of my life. It had been about choosing myself over their dysfunction. Some might say I should have tried harder to maintain family relationships, that blood should mean something. But I'd learned that DNA doesn't entitle anyone to destroy your life. Real family doesn't steal from you, lie to you, or try to take what you've earned. Real family celebrates your success instead of plotting to steal it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, "Coffee's ready, love. And I made your favorite breakfast." I smiled, heading inside to the life I'd built on my own terms. The past was behind me, its lessons learned and its chains broken. To those watching who might be in similar situations, know this: you don't owe your success to family members who see you as nothing more than a resource. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who claim to love you while picking your pockets. My parents had been planning to move my brother into my house while I was on a trip. Instead, their plan had freed me from a lifetime of exploitation. The trap I'd set had caught them, but more importantly, it had released me. And that freedom was worth more than any house could ever be. What would you do if your family tried to steal from you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting what's yours? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves, even against family. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of triumph over adversity. Remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your success, not those who plot to steal it. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to protect what you've earned and the wisdom to know when to walk away.